Welcome to our video on the Battle of Chickamauga, one of the bloodiest battles of the American Civil War. The battle took place on September 18th through the 20th, 1863 in northern Georgia. It was fought between the Confederate Army of Tennessee led by General Braxton Bragg and the Union Army of the Cumberland led by General William Rosecrans. One interesting fact about the battle is that it was the first and only major Confederate victory in the western theater of the war. The Confederate Army was able to push the Union Army back and capture the city of Chattanooga. Another interesting fact is that the battle had the highest percentage of casualties of any major battle in the Civil War. Over 34,000 soldiers were killed, wounded, or captured. One notable figure from the battle was Confederate General Thomas Stonewall Jackson's protege, James Longstreet, who led the Confederates' successful assault on the Union's right flank. But perhaps the most interesting fact about the battle is that it was fought on land that was part of the Cherokee Nation. The Cherokee were forcibly removed from the land by the U.S. government, a process known as the Trail of Tears, just a few years before the battle took place. The Battle of Chickamauga was a turning point in the Civil War and a reminder of the devastating impact of war on both soldiers and civilians. Today, the Chickamauga-Chattanooga National Military Park preserves the battlefield as a monument to those who fought and died there. The Confederate victory opened the door for them to invade Tennessee and potentially even Kentucky and Ohio, which would have greatly impacted the war effort for the Union. It is also worth mentioning that the battle was fought at a time when the Civil War was entering its third year and both sides were becoming increasingly entrenched in their positions. The Battle of Chickamauga was one of the last major Confederate victories in the war, and it was a significant setback for the Union Army. Another important aspect of the Battle of Chickamauga is the role of African American soldiers in the Union Army. The Union Army had begun to enlist African American soldiers in 1862, but they were mostly used for labor and support roles rather than combat. However, at the Battle of Chickamauga, several regiments of African American soldiers were pressed into combat, and they performed bravely despite facing discrimination and racism from both their own officers and the Confederate soldiers. It is also worth mentioning that the Battle of Chickamauga was not only a military conflict, but also a political one. The Union Army was fighting not just to defeat the Confederate Army, but also to preserve the Union and abolish slavery. The Confederate Army, on the other hand, was fighting not just to defeat the Union Army, but also to protect their way of life, which included the institution of slavery. Another interesting fact is that the battle had a large impact on the civilians in the area. Many civilians had to flee their homes, leaving behind their possessions and livelihood. They faced hardships such as food and shelter shortages, and some were even forced to take refuge in caves or trenches. The Battle of Chickamauga also brought destruction to the farms, towns, and properties in the area, leaving them in ruin and causing economic hardship that would take years to recover. In summary, the Battle of Chickamauga was a pivotal event in American history, and it played an important role in shaping the outcome of the Civil War. It was a brutal battle with a high cost of human lives, and it had a long-lasting impact on the soldiers, civilians, and the region. It also highlights the role of African American soldiers in the political and social context of the war. Visiting the Chickamauga-Chattanooga National Military Park is a great way to gain a deeper understanding of the battle and its significance.